Hey guys, I just wanted to give you my review of Arrow Season 5, Episode 8, Invasion Part 2 of the crossover. And also, it happens to be Arrow's 100th episode. And I gotta say, this is definitely it was more of like a standalone, like, it felt more like a standalone 100th episode and not so much of a part of the crossover, since a lot of the crossover stuff was kind of like somewhat minor. But anyway, apparently all the heroes of Star City that got abducted during the Flash, they were basically placed under these like virtual simulations, whereas like they're living out like their greatest desires, like kind of like It's a Wonderful Life kind of scenario. If and especially Oliver, like what his life would have been like if he never got on the boat. He's engaged to Laurel Lance. Both of his parents are still alive. As of Tommy, presumably, but they make a nice meta joke as to why he's not there, and saying about but the conversation between Thea and Malcolm, where they're saying is like, where Thea's like, well, I can't believe he's a doctor, and Malcolm says, well, he couldn't make it. Chicago isn't very close, which is a reference to his actor Colin O'Donnell being on Chicago Med, regular on Chicago Med, and why they couldn't get him for his not only his appearance here, so that's why they had like a CGI. I think it was like a CGI image of him later on, but it also is why I don't think he's Prometheus. And you also get to see. It's nice to see like they got as many of the people back as they could. Basically, the parents, and then they have like Ray Palmer still engaged to Felicity, and I guess Sarah's is basically home for the weekend for the quote unquote wedding, and think she was still in college. But basically throughout the episode, and all the heroes start having flashes of their original lives. Oliver being the first of them, because he's walking down an alley in which Robert Queen's supposed to become mayor, and Oliver's supposed to take over the company. Even though Queen Consolidated still has a Smoke Technologies logo on it, conspicuously, and they're about to be attacked by a mugger, kind of like Batman's parents and in all of his origin stories, but then they're saved by the Hood, and basically John Diggle is the Hood, and Oliver's, because of his memory flashes, is compelled to investigate what's going on. He finds the Arrow Cave. He's confronted by Felicity and John Diggle, and he tries to tell them that, I don't think this is real, I think your brother's dead, and Diggle just gets pissed off and tells him to get lost. But Diggle eventually comes back and now with his memories recovered, and with a drawing of a Dominator as proof that they know that they're in some kind of virtual reality, and that they're going to have to put in like safeguards to try to keep them from getting out. And so they're confronted with a virtual construct of Deathstroke, and it's Sarah. And when they're getting overwhelmed, it's Sarah who comes to the rescue and kills the virtual Deathstroke. And then she starts asking herself, how do I know Kung Fu? And so they talk to her. She starts to remember everything, and they start talking to Ray and Thea. They both start remembering everything, and then but the thing is that Thea, even though she remembers, she doesn't want to leave the virtual world because of like how much they lost, and she doesn't want to say goodbye to Laurel or her parents again. And she figures, they just have the Flash and Supergirl to take care of, protect the Earth and whatnot. But then they're all confronted when they're trying to leave the Queen Mansion. They're confronted by the Dark Archer, Damien Dark, Deathstroke, the Deathstroke soldiers, and some of the ghosts. And Thea eventually changes her mind, comes to help, and that's like the symbolism of how it's basically each of these characters dealing with their inner demons. Thea faces off against Malcolm because of the trauma that he put her through, and taking away her agency by brainwashing her into killing Sarah. Sarah facing off against Damien Dark because he murdered Laurel. Oliver facing off against Deathstroke because of all the hell that he was put through in season 2 as well, and killing his mom. And Ray facing off against the Deathstroke soldiers because they killed his wife off screen during the events of the season 2 finale. And then of course Diggle's fighting off against the Ghosts because of how Andy was a member of Damien Dark's Ghost, and I guess how he just took them away from him. So and it was really probably the coolest thing I enjoyed was basically Thea stabbing Malcolm with a sword, and then Thea using her bow and arrow to shoot the arrow to Sarah. She catches it, stabs Damien Dark. She passes the bow over to Oliver, and then he uses an arrow to put one into Deathstroke's eye. And so all the constructs disappear, and afterwards they're able to get out of the virtual world, but not before Oliver takes one long look at all the people that he's lost. Tommy, Laurel, Roy, even though he has to go into hiding because of the events of season 3, his parents, and all this kind of hearing messages of they're kind of voiceovers of dialogue from previous episodes just cheering him on. And so they basically escape, and then they have this cool sequence where Oliver's got they're trying to get to an escape pod, and Oliver's got the alien gun, and he gets to fire them, the Dominators, just to chase them, just to create a distraction. They find an escape pod and fly away in one of the Dominators' fighter ships, but then they get chased by other fighter ships from the Dominators, and it feels kind of very reminiscent of from The Force Awakens, from when Finn and Poe Dameron are escaping in the TIE Fighter, and then the forces of the First Order chasing up after them. It feels very reminiscent of that. Whether it's unintentional or not, I still loved it. And then of course we have the Citizen Steel coming to the rescue on the Wave Rider and using the tractor beam to take up their Oliver's ship, and then Diggle gets taken to the med bay because he was injured during the escape, and Ray tells them about how apparently the Dominators have are planning an invade. They're apparently they were probing their brain, apparently just probing their brains, and they were only kidnapped because they were non-superpowered. Ray realizes that they were probing their minds to help them create a special weapon to use on Earth, and that the Dominator's mothership is heading towards Earth. So, like I said, I really liked. I really enjoyed this episode. It really was one of their better episodes. This is probably one of Stephen Amell's best performances. I liked how this was kind of not only is a great celebration of his era with the legacy it's left, which given that especially on a meta sense, the theme of legacy of creating all these spin-offs with Flash and Legends of Tomorrow and Supergirl. And speaking of which, the only side story that they had was basically Felicity Curtis and Cisco working together to try to working with the rest of Team Arrow to try to find the abducted Star City heroes. And it was kind of this moment where you feel at least with Curtis Holt's actor Echo Kellum, there are times where it just feels I don't know, it's everybody was there were three nerdy characters that are trying to out nerd the other or overact a little bit. And then there was when they had to go on a mission to retrieve a chip to help track down the Dominators from a villain called Cyberwoman. Team Arrow was accompanied by Flash and Supergirl, and I don't know. Basically, Wild Dog was like giving them guff about how he hates people with superpowers and aliens. Aliens and metahumans showed up because of Flash and Supergirl, and he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But then, of course, Flash and Supergirl saved his life after defeating Cyberwoman, and he changes his tune immediately. But it just feels kind of out of nowhere, just because of the fact that it was never established he ever hated metahumans or anybody with superpowers. I mean, he works with Ragman. He has superpowers, and that's never been brought up. So it's like, oh, let's give the actor some kind of arc and something to do, but it feels very shoehorned in. And had they established that maybe earlier in the season, that it would have had maybe a nicer payoff, but it was just like, it was just stupid. But anyway, guys, what do you think of the episode of Arrow? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.